among all of the dear viewers, but for one of the cultural relics, it is widely known, and it's also a household name. Many of the people see these statues at their hometowns, in the different railway stations, starting from the year 1983, when the statue was identified as the symbols of the China's tourism industry. It becomes a well-known symbol all across the country. So this year marks the 15 years anniversary for the unearthing of these statues, and today we are going to have a side tour about these bronze galloping horses and to see why it is the icon of the museum and even the icons for the Chinese tourism industry. So as a part of the Silk Route, let's have a eye-to-eye witness about that part and about that part of the history. So here we like to introduce the deputy curators of the museum to tell everybody about the bronze galloping horses and the ancient history of the Silk Road. So please say hello to our viewers. Hi. So as I introduced at the very beginning, Leitai was a county and a tourism spot. But for the bronze galloping horses, many different cities were setting up statues for that. This is actually representing the Chinese tourism industry, and for those vast tourism cities all across the country, they have the identity, they have the rights to set up these statues. But we are actually using the original shape of the statues to be set here. So once a city was selected to the best tourism city in China, they will be honored, and they will have the right to set up a bronze galloping horse. And this is actually indicating this is also a symbol representing the best tourism city in China. And here in Gansu, I see that in Lanzhou, in front of its railway stations, we have the statues of bronze galloping horses, and in Tianshi County, we also see a statue in a similar shape. This year marks the 50 years unearthing of the bronze galloping shape, and when we recalled that part of the history, starting from the year 1969, September, we saw the statue for the first time. Many of the viewers actually saw the statue through their historic textbook or through the television. But today we are actually see a part of the relics, and when you are touring around Gansu, you might have a chance to see the original statue, to feel its Christmas. So here it's actually showing the two bronze galloping statue, and this is actually 1-to-1 ratios relic to the original pieces. The statue, the horse statues, it is 34.5 centimeter high and 41 centimeter long, and it weighs 8 kilograms. So for most of the statues on the market, it's featured as a bronze grain because it has been set up in the tomb for over 2,000 years. From the historic textbook and from the televisions, we see a lot of the bronze wares, for example, the relics for the worships. Why do we view this craftsmanship as one of the treasures in the Chinese histories? We see two different parts of the statues. One is golden, another is bronze grain. We actually guess that at the very beginning, when the bronze Galloping Horse was set up in the tomb. It is originally colored as this golden color. And we see a lot with oxidated rust right now, which was attaching on the bronze galloping horse. So many of the historians mentioned that or in some of the television shows, we see a lot with the bronze green-colored statues, but actually this color was being oxidized after 1,000 years, so the color is not right in the television shows. At the times, the royal families and all the houses at the time are pursuing for the golden statues. So everyone was worshipping the manor at that time. In the late Han stage, they believed that all of the royal families, when they were buried in the tombs, they should be buried with a lot of treasures. So this is actually a quite luxurious tombs back in the Eastern Han Dynasties. During the excavations in the year 1969 and in the year 1983, it was selected as the first list of 64 Grade 1 cultural relics. And in the year 1996, the State Administration of Cultural Heritage set it as the first list of the cultural relics that are forbidden to be existed outside China. And this is also a Grade 1 cultural relics. It's rare, and from the appreciation point of view, the shape of this bronze galloping horse is elegant and beautiful. In the year 2002, it was forbidden to be existed outside China. We have exhibited the statue in Britain, in Japan, in Mexico, and in regions like Hong Kong. But starting from the year 2002, it cannot get outside of China from the arts appreciation perspectives, because one cultural relics are actually representing a country's image. So because if its values and romantic it represented. So here, let's have a more detailed look about this statue. After unearthing this statue, many historians and archaeologists think that it's a very dedicated and complicated structure. So when people are describing the postures and speed of one horse, we will see that the horse speed are actually succeeding the speed of the cart. And for the very initial designers of these craftsmen, and we see the horse was striding on a flying swan, and we see this flying swan was actually looking back, since it's not aware of what happened. So using this, we are representing the author themselves are actually representing the horse's postures, narrings, and speed. So when it was protruding on the back of the flying swallow. We see the wings of this swallow were opening up. From our perspectives, the ratios between the house and also the swallow is not correct, but with the spreading wings, it actually gives more support to the statue and stabilize the center of gravity for the statue. So if we are looking at this statue, we will see the center of the gravity was actually located on the birds. All of it is supported by the thin right rear leg. So from a paramount perspective, this is a beautiful statues. We see a lot of Western houses statues when they were representing the speed of a house. They like to add 2 wings on the back of the house. But if you see all the statues along the Silk Road, they are actually using all kinds other different things to represent the speed of the house. And when you are looking at the statues in Mogaku, you will find that many different waves are actually representing the speed. And the Fiftieth, the flying fairies, are also representing the speed of the house. This statue, while the house was chewing on a flying swallow, is actually representing the speed of the house. Many viewers online are actually seeing the photos which were shooting from the side perspective, or when the statue was. So many of the photos was taken from a side perspective. From many different internet viewers, when they viewed the real statues, they found that if you look the house from the front perspective, it's a little bit cute, with its mouth open and all the tooths showing for the viewers. But from a biological perspective, when the house was speeding up, they actually normally open up their mouths. So in the Han Dynasty, the Emperor Wuwei actually have a special favor for the houses. He selected houses and bred up house. So when he was fighting against the Nordic herbs, he always failed, and he summed up all of the reasons for his failure. It is because that the houses in the Central China region don't have quite long legs. So, but for his rivals, they have better houses with longer legs and better shapes and more strength. So that's the reason why he improves it and breed up the new different houses speed. And he heard that in the Wuwei County, there are new breeds of the house. He sent his ambassadors to get the new houses, but the king does not agree to give him the breed of the house, even if he wants to trade the house with the real garden, with a garden house. That is to say, the house was being traded with the lives of thousands of soldiers. So when the houses was transported to the Hexi road, at that time, the emperor actually selected Wuwei County as the breeding up regions. That is to say, the Wuwei County were shouldering quite important responsibilities as the cultivations and the supporting areas. because the emperor actually likes the houses. His preferences are actually leading up all the society's fashion. That is why the whole society actually want to build up new houses. And at that time, many different scholars, in order to meet up with the favors of the emperor, they wrote up these special articles and academic papers about the houses. For example, they actually written articles about how to select the best breed, the best species of the house. The house's head should be long, and the eyes should be filled with glamour. The skeletons of the houses should be with all kinds of the strengths. If the houses have a large nozzles, that means it has a quite good lung function. The better the tooth, the healthy the animal is. Let's look at the whole bodies of the house. You will see that the legs for the house is very suited for riding up in the mountains and in the sands. But for the houses in the Han Dynasty, for most of their species, they don't have a long legs and a strong hoof. And they don't have a long servicing time for the whole army. The houses is more like a commercial house. But if you look at this house, it's the warrior houses, which was quite useful in fighting against the enemies in the vast sea of sands and even among the mountains. At the time, the Emperor Wuwei actually selected these special houses as one part of its warriors. For most of the houses, is actually striding one leg out, while seeing another leg which was flying out. That is to say, for its front and rear legs, it was actually working at the same time. This is avoiding the anti and resistance from the earth. And if you look at other different houses at the time, there is no stride for the houses. And they believe that the stride is actually changing the global histories. And with the stride, less and less death was occurred. So without any stride, it's very difficult for the riders to riding on the houses. So if you are riding on the house was actually you are actually riding on a cradle. You mentioned about that at the time when we were setting up name for these statues. When I was in my primary schools, I still remember that the first article I need to recite is about this statue. At the time, I think the statue was called Galloping Horse Treading on a Flying Swan. And I actually researched a lot of the material. They told me that the statue was called the Bronze Galloping Horse. So I actually researched it with a lot of the material. Some of the historians told me that the bird might be a swallow, and some of the historians in the article mentioned that it might be a falcon. At the very beginning, people called it the Galloping Horse Treading on a Flying Swan, but some of the historians mentioned that it's not a swan because swan has three parts of its wings, but with these, there's one bird shared similar features with this bird, which was lying down at the statue. Some of the people think it's more like a fallen, and some of the people think that it's normal birds. For most of the birds, no matter which kinds of the birds it was treading on, the bird's name is not that important. What's more important is about the speed of the horse. All of the birds is actually demonstrating the speed of the horse. This is representing the statue, and its posters, names, and speeds are believed to be the perfect symbols of the enterprising and perseverance spirits of Chinese people and Chinese nation. For the statue, it's always looking to the west because in the Chinese language, looking west also means hope. This is also a statue of the hope. It's representing a good wish for our work and for our day-to-day life. In 1969, it was something we did not unexpected. In 1969 March, at the time, our country was actually fighting against the former Soviet Union. And at the time, all the countries were echoing for Chairman Mao's call for digging more air excavations. And in September 1969, so when the local farmers were unearthing, and at that time they found a tomb. And for all the farmers who still are alive today, they did not dig too deep, and they find the first bronze statue. And they dig deeper, and they see vast blocks, and they find this tomb finally. In the year 1969, the tomb was excavated for 2 times, and we find at least 2 holes in the tomb. 50 years anniversary for the first unearthing of this national treasure. These are the houses with a 6-time ratio of the original piece. We are not sure the owners of the tomb listed and arranged all of this in this manner because at the very beginning, the farmers did not record the different positions, and we actually borrow the knowledge from another tomb in the Linyi City, Shandong Province. Let's see what's lacking behind. So this is indicating at that time there is no stride on the horseback. So when we were learning from the poem about the poem of Mulan, And when Mulan was receiving the calls from the king to fight in the war, and we learn from the poems that Mulan did not buy. She buy a house from the Eastern market and buy the sword from the Western market, but she did not buy a stride on the house. That is to say, the discovery of the stride actually added up more power to the army. The selections of the houses is very important. So that is to say, at a period, the selection of the speed of the house is very essential for the winning of the war. We see that all the tails of the horse were actually firmly attached to the bodies of the horse. It is because that at that time, the army actually selected all of the horses, and because of a historical lessons in the warrior period, the kingdom Zheng was fighting against the kingdom Qi. At the time, they were actually forming up a group of the houses, for example, the 4 houses in a line with 3 warriors on the cart behind that. So when the Qi warrior was fighting against the Zheng warriors, and the tails was swollen into the cart. So they actually later on they sum up that all the tails of the horse are being firmly attached. The horse also had its own armors during the wartime. So for one piece of this craftsmanship, this actually gives us a lot of information about the ancient battles in the Chinese histories. So these horses lineup actually gives us a lot of information. For all the soldiers, they were actually wearing clothes which was mimicking the clothes of the Nordic ethnic group at the time. In the clothes, there is actually no buttons. So for most of the people living in the Han Dynasty, they don't wear any trousers. But for the soldiers who are about to fight in the northwest part of the China, and they did not wear trousers, and this is a more clothing and practical way of wearing, and it's also kept the warmth within the soldier's body. If they want to arching, and also if they want to spread the sword, so when the king of the Zhao was spreading of these new clothes, this has greatly increased the power of the soldiers. But even in Han dynasties, in our Silk Road area, all the Nordic ethnic group are actually wearing this type of clothes, wearing the trousers. So this communication actually facilitates the two sides. So in the peaceful times, there are people-to-people exchange during the different kingdoms and herbs. But during the war times, there are also different cultural exchanges. And for battles, it's also a clash of different cultures. And If you remember the King Alexander, when he was conducting his crusade, he was bringing up all kinds of the European cultures into the Chinese region. And if you look at the ethnic people's way of wearing, that's a way of mimic the European crusade soldiers and warriors' way of wearing. Many of the viewers might ask me this question, and today we are still unknown that in all the owners of the tomb, we only know that the owners of the tomb named Zhang. His family name is Zhang. I see a lot of archaeologists who are giving me information that for these ancient papers, they are not sure about the tomb owner's name. And actually, on the back of the houses, we see several different names of the owners. We are sure that the general is named Zhang for the tomb. The owners of the tomb is actually a general who named Zhang. If you look at this cart, you will see one soldier was carrying with an axe. And the axe is not a practical usage in the battlefield. In the ancient time, if the royal family wants to fight against another royal family, the king will give the general an access. So with this access, the general can lead the army with all the king's power and king's support. So if you look at this card, this is actually demonstrating the owner's statue. According to the Han historic material, if you are a director at a prefectures, you will enjoy 200 kilograms of the grains per year. But if you are a soldier, then you will get 2,000 kilograms of the grain per year. So we can see from that statue, the owners of the tomb enjoyed a quite luxurious life. We believe that from the supporting, so our ancestors showing up their wealth just like what we are doing right now. They are using the transportation ways to demonstrating their wealth. So from these statues, there are 3 to 6 houses, and there are 40 different carts, among which there's also one cart which was covered by cars. So why it was so at the time, the general, he himself, is serving in the Greater Zhangye region, and is actually a vastly covered area. Not only included this county, but also included the majority part of the Gansu province. And in the Han Dynasty, when the Hexi County was settled, Wuwei was actually the capital of the Hexi County. And because of the historic reasons, at that time, the Hexi corridor was sparsely populated. So the emperor actually made a lot of the farmers relocated themselves to this region once again. So at the time, the local economy grew quite rapidly. At the time, we see the houses, the cars, the people, and the farmers relocated themselves and pioneered themselves in this region. In the 1980s, the Hexi capital was still one of the 10 most important food and grain providers in the country. We talk about the emergencies about the different people for one wartime, and it is one part of the history, but for most of the part of the history, it is about the peaceful times. The Emperor Wuwei see a lot of fight against the Xiongnu Nordic Herbs, but during the 16 kingdom regions and periods, there's a poem indicating that the blood was just waving. So during the wartime, the blood was actually mounted so high that even the heels of the people of the pedestrians was immersed under the blood. Let me give you more introduction about the name of the Wuwei County. So we all know that originally the Wuwei County was belonged to the Xiongnu Nordic groups. And for the Xiongnu Nordic groups, they have been occupying this region for many years. And in the year 1299, so the general Hu Qubing was actually fight against the Xiongnu Nordic people. So after the two Xiongnu generals was killed, the Emperor Wuwei actually marked this victory here as Wuwei to demonstrating his power and his military muscle. This region's name was originally honored that battlefield victory. So the name of the local county is demonstrating the power of histories and the military muscles of the Emperor Wuwei at that time. I have been doing this kind of report for many years. Since I entered into the Leitai, no matter for the floating sculptures or other different statues, it gives me a lot of favors. For Dunhuang, it's also very different. It's actually giving me the military power because this is also really closely related to the terrains of the Wuwei and the Hexi capitals. Once you are working outside of the Chang'an, the capital at the time, you will feel that it is just like an inland. It's just like an inland gateway to the capital. Strategically speaking, if you occupy in the Wuwei region, you can actually occupy in the Lanzhou region, and there is one historian expert from Wuhan University which noted that all of the Silk Route is just like connected parts, but for Wuwei, it actually works as the connections for different parts of the Silk Route capitals. From the recently, when we were seeing the China and the different countries exchanging their informations, starting from the Chang'an County, from Zhangye to the western part, they give us different camels. And once you are outside of the Zhangye area, all of the transportation method was changed from the horses to the camels. Many different viewers might understand the regional Wuwei from a poem. So from this poem, the beautiful wines and also the glasses reflecting the glitters through the wines. At the time, there are all kinds of the dances and species, agriculture, fruits. So when the monk Xuanzang was trying to go to the West to find the true essence of the Buddhism, he noted that Liangzhou is the capital of Hexi Capital, with all the businessmen with their houses striding back and forth in the Liangzhou region. So at the time, he mentioned for 7 kilometers in the Liangzhou region, there are 100,000 households, and he sees and hears different music instruments played from different ethnic groups. During the Tang Dynasty, Liangzhou was actually leading at the forefront of the fashion industry. And if you look at and there is also one poem from Lu You, noting that the fashions from Liangzhou actually influence the whole nation. So many of the poets actually read poems like they travel to Liangzhou during their dreams. Yesterday, when I was arriving in Liangzhou, one actually historic experts taught me that Liangzhou is the gateway to the inland China at that time. Liangzhou has its geographical importance, connecting the western part of China with the central part of China. The most typical part is the poem we have been talking about. During the 16th Kingdom period, the middle kingdom, the middle part of China was in all kinds of the chaos, while Liangzhou enjoyed a good, luxury, and well-economic developed period. And there are 5 different kingdoms of Liangzhou, and many different kingdoms are actually setting up their capital in the Liangzhou. So for the businessmen who really want to do their business in the middle part of China, they actually give up their part of the business in the middle part of China because of the war. And so they bring their many different cultural relics from the Europes, from the Persian countries to the Liangzhou region. And during the Sui and Tang Dynasty, the development of the Liangzhou region cannot be separated from the wartime. And as one of the experts Yu Qiuyu mentioned, that the Liangzhou's development cannot be separated from the local historic developments. This was back in the year 1972 when President Nixon was visiting China. He himself actually viewed about these statues. So this is also a paper which means that the provincial museum actually transferred that cultural relics from the Gansu province to these regions. In the year 1976, when Guo Ruo was viewed about this statue, and he actually came back and reported to Premier Zhou Enlai at the time to see the statue is a cultural relics. And he believed that it's going to create a quite good feedback and echoes quite well during the exhibition. That is the reason why they actually transferred this Bronze Galloping Horse to Beijing. And in the year 1962, and when President Nixon was viewing was paid his state visit to China, he himself was actually viewed about these houses. And in the year 1973, when the British Museum was exhibiting about that the bronze galloping horses, Her Majesty, the Queen of Britain, are actually wild about that statue at the time because the other different relics was also demonstrating in the Great Britain Museum. So we actually win the applause from the British public. So if you look at this card, you see that these carts are very suited to climbing in different mountains, and it can actually climb in mountains as steep as around 30 degrees or 40 degrees. So this cart was well suited to in the Gobi region and also in the Sands region. This is a weapon.
头一个字，其实怒击呢，它可以说是改变了战争面貌的一件武器。这种武器呢，它是杀伤力呢。
This is actually a bronze cross sword.
在这个战国时候，其实已经用到了，比如说宋兵跟那个唐军的马陵道。
This is a bronze crossbow. And the crossbow actually greatly improve the efficiencies of the wartime because for the sword, they can be supported for a long time. They can't be supported for a long time, but for the crossbow, they can be shooted for a long period. We think this is representing the wisdom of our ancestors because since we have the soldiers fighting on the back of the horse, they need to have their supportive weapons. The crossbow are being finished with handcrafts. This delicacy cannot even be replicated through the modern technologies. In this tomb, we also find the wares for the alcohols, to drink the alcohols. It's very possible that they are drinking the grape wines because in the Han Dynasty, the densities of the wine is not that high. So if we really strictly follow the historical record, we will find all the bronze wares is a day-to-day life usage for the general public. This is the largest cast we have been unearthed. So if you look at this can, you will see that it has a quite big middle part. It's very suited for the ancestors to prove all kinds of the rats or mosquitoes to flying inside. So I think that our ancestors do have their wisdom. Sometimes, from our modern perspectives, their wisdom actually they always outsmart us in their day-to-day life. For the Silk Road, they have all kinds of the bronze, all kinds of the ceramics, which was transferred and exchanged in the Silk Road. This is a model for this tomb. So from the very entrance and gateway of the tomb, its length is around 40 meters. The tomb itself in this position, there is an excavation hall. So for the Bronze Galloping Horse, it was founded at the right side of the tomb. The tomb is also a symmetric architect with one room on the right side and another room in the left side. And so when we open up the right rooms, we find all of the golden wares and silver wares were being stolen. We are not sure about the lining up of the houses in the left sides. This is also because during the excavations, the farmers actually damaged the original listed up. We don't know the original lining up of all of these tombs. So it's quite damage to our ancient culture. We find another excavation hall in the middle part of that room. So we think the excavators entered into these regions. For these branches of the Great One cultural relics in China, most of it is being discovered in the middle room of the tomb. And it's also the widest tomb, and this is like the living room for the tomb owner. And we find at the right side of this middle room of tombs, there was a lot of kitchenwares. We find ceramics, some of the plates, some of the architectwares, and even in the right room, we found that there is one bowl which was curved as the bowl used by a slave, which is also under General Zhang's name. All of the kitchenware, is it being fixed? For example, if I'm a slave for the general, I have my own bowl and plate, right? So from this perspective, that all the bowls and all the kitchenwares, they belong to the owners. So for the slaves, they have their own bowls to enjoy the foods. As an archaeologist, as a curator of this museum, every time you find the illegal excavations, you think that it's like a damage to the historic treasures. It's not what we are feeling right now. And even in the ancient times, they actually listed that the illegal excavations of the tombs as treasons. And even in ancient times, the country are actually setting up a lot of the from Chang'an to Zhangye. All the transportations was done on the back of the horse, while after Zhangye, the transportations and the carries of the goods was done on the back of the camels. For the general public, they cannot fit one horse in their households. For the Wuwei Emperor, every year there are 300,000 houses which was being produced every year. That is to say, he was really a quite wealthy emperor at the time during his reign. For all the houses during the wartime, it's a very important strategic resources, and it's also a very important way of transferring information, carrying out goods, and for the general public transportations. From Liangzhou to Xi'an, there are 13 different stations, and in the different stations, it was facilitated with sufficient horses for the postmen to transfer about their horses. They transfer the horses. The postman don't exchanges their horses, and with the information on him. And when he was reaching one station and the procedures, he will exchange his horse. And during his journey, many of the horses is playing an important part when was transferring, when the information was exchanged and transformed, and the horses retired. So we have a Chinese saying that you have if you in Chinese saying that if you are saying that the person contributed a lot, you will see that he or she was actually work like a horse. So we are about to enter into this region to check about the ancient relics about the Leitai Eastern Han Tomb. Why in this region it is called the Lei cultural relics? So we call it so when Zhang nobles inherited this part, there's also the Dongyue region, Dongyue platform. In the 1970s, the reason we call it Lei platform is that there are several generals in Wuwei. There are quite few rainfalls in Wuwei. Every year we only enjoy 60 grams or 100 grams of the rainfalls, and that is to say we are in a quite dry region. So the reason we call it thunder platform is that the general public want to pray for the thunders and praise for more rainfalls during that stage. From the Chang'an city, the capital of the Han Dynasty, heading west, entering the first station, entering the Hexi capital, it's the Yijun, then it's the Zhangye, then it's the Dunhuan. It's a strategic historic part. And at that time, even from the current perspectives, the northwest cities are relatively lagging behind with the coastal cities, but during the Han and Tang Dynasty, these are the Beijing and Shanghai at that time. So we are joking that the Wuwei and Liangzhou at the time, they are just at the forefront of the reform and the opening up. It's more like entering the Shenzhen and Shanghai in the 1980s. Most of the poets reading their poems about going to Liangzhou during their dreams. For example, Lu You or Li Bai, they were also written a lot about Liangzhou. In the Tang Dynasty, the dances and the songs from Liangzhou are widespread. We call it the hometown of dances during the Tang Dynasty. For example, the Liangzhou actually transferred how the people viewed about the world. At the time, the governor of Liangzhou actually carries 100 different dances to the capital, and the dances from Liangzhou is quite good demonstrations of the finest dance in the Han Dynasty. There's one poem for Lu You, saying that the Liangzhou's songs and dances are spread all across the nation. Today we have kept several different parts for the Liangzhou relics and Liangzhou cultures. And in many different musics and Liangzhou, we can still enjoy one part of the relics. And in Quanzhou, if you listen to the Quanzhou's ancient performance and also their musical instrument, they are actually mimicking the ancient Liangzhou song. Thank you very much, Madam Chen, for your one-time 1 hour's show. You actually give us a quite complicated indications and explanations. This year marks the 50 years anniversary for unearthing the Bronze Galloping Horse, and we are seeing that looking back to the past 50 years, why the cultural relics becomes tourism symbols and national treasures. And even in the year 2002, it was forbidden to go to the other countries. And it's actually representing the horse are actually believed to be the perfect symbols of the Chinese people's spirit. We tested that once we entered into the tomb, the live stream, we cannot demonstrate the videos through the tombs, but at that time, but I believe that in the museum, we actually have a good view about the tomb. After 1 hour, we have listened to the very pursuit of the emperor for the houses, and from the Dayu, from the Wutun, it's all about the people-to-people exchange, culture-to-culture exchange. Dances, and songs are being performed in different stages across the country. A piece of the history for Liangzhou is a gold reflection of the Hexi corridor. It's also a panorama of the Silk Route at the time. Of course, just like every poet, every one of us have the Liangzhou in our dreams. We are pursuing for the Belt Route Initiative, for the people-to-people exchange. The way of exchange never stopped here. We thank you very much for your exciting introduction. So here we end our live shows, and when you are visiting the Gansu province, I highly suggest you to look at the bronze statue. And if you are in your own city, please look to the statue at your own city. And just like the statue indicated on us, we should have our hope about our lives. Thank you very much for watching.